So, what kind of radiations do mobiles emit?
Mobiles largely emit only radiations that are like sound frequencies. So these frequencies do not necessarily go through uh, deeper tissues in the body. Largely stays around the skin area.
Birds don't get near the area of these mobile towers because of radiation.
And probably keeping mobiles in your pockets. Does it impact reproductive health and does it lead to infertility?
Male sexual organs, it's very important that it's in a cool place. God made scrotal sac so that it's outside the body and it has a temperature lower than the body temperature.
When a video game is programmed, they program it in a way that addiction is created. Is that true?
They will know which button I pressed for how long did I focus on one page. They have this data.
Welcome to Oncoflex podcast. I am Dr. Lohit Reddy, consultant radiation oncologist at HCG Hospitals.
And I'm Dr. Kritika Shekhar, consultant radiation oncologist at HCG and your co-host at Oncoflix podcast.
Call at your own risk. Today, we are going to demystify the aspect of mobile usage and its link to cancer causations. Today, we have with us Dr. Divya Nallur, psychiatrist and clinical director at Amaha. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah. So, what kind of radiations do mobiles emit and how does it interact with our human body?
So, mobiles largely emit only radiations that are like sound frequencies. So, these frequencies do not necessarily go through deeper tissues in the body. Largely stays around the skin area. But we do know that long exposures to it may cause long-term consequences. Because mobile technology has been fairly recent, we do not know really long-term effects of these radio frequencies. For now, there is no conclusive proof that it causes significant damage to anything in the body. But we know that it kind of affects heart rate, it kind of affects fertility, it kind of may affect causation of tumors. But, the causation itself is still research.
So, madam, why has the WHO classified mobile radiation as possibly carcinogenic? And is there a really proven link between mobile radiation and cancer? Like how you mentioned, even with longer periods, is there an associative?
So I want to bring in here the history of smoking, right? When first smoking came during Industrial Revolution, uh, everyone, doctors saw that there was a little bit more lung problems. And then when doctors said, hey, smoking is causing this, everyone revolted, saying, especially tobacco industries, and everyone said, no, this is industrial revolution causing, right? And then doctors continued to try more research to actually establish causation, as in smoking causes cancer, which is well known right now. We took more than a few decades, probably a century, to find that causation. We also know that medical research is expensive. To create these causational studies, we need to repeatedly do studies, and it takes a very long time, especially because there are so many things in the environment, in our genes, that can affect all of this. So, is it the environment affecting? Is it my gene affecting? Is it the specific mobile phone which is affecting? No one knows. And to prove that, it takes a very long time. So why did WHO actually say this may be causational? There may be there have been some studies which have proved inconclusive evidence, is what we say, as in, we don't know for sure, but there's a possibility. Right? Especially in rat models, when they first do research in animal models, when one study was done in a rat model, but a much higher radiation frequency was given, longer periods of time was given. At that time, they saw that the rats did develop some of the tumors. So is there a possibility? A rat's lifespan is shorter than human. So if you give it for radiation for 3 months, it may be equivalent to humans having for 3 years.
Right.
But so say if mobile technology has been 20 years old, is that long enough to know What are the problems?
Right, right.
And so WHO probably saw these slow evidences that growing, and they have said, be careful. It may be possible that
Can
it is causation.
one can't say that no, it doesn't cause.
Yes. But we don't know for sure that it causes,
Right.
but we also don't know for sure that it does not
Doesn't
cause.
cause.
And there's another, we all come from, like the Indian culture. There's very clear evidence in all our scriptures, whichever religion you take, that everything should be done in Madhyama,
Correct.
right? Anything in excess is bad. So doctors have said many years ago, ghee is bad. Then they say ghee is good. Then they say sugar is bad. This little sugar is okay. Good carbohydrate is okay. You should have balance. But ultimately, for anything you see, it's about madhyama. It's about doing enough, but not too much of anything.
So with respect to mobile phones, I think it's like an integral part of our body. It's probably an extension of another body part. It's in the present era with so much of technology and the data. It's very difficult to get away from our mobiles, and we totally don't know what is with respect to the electromagnetic waves and how is it going to be integrated with other factors which could contribute to diseases like cancer and chronic diseases.
That is
It has become like a sensory organ, like your eyes, like your ears.
Yes, it is very soon becoming an extension, like you said, of our own body. But how do we make it safe? How do we not make it an extension of our body? How do we not damage our current organs by creating this extension is the question.
There's always been a question where, we keep our phones in our pockets. We're very close to our reproductive organs. How does mobile phone usage and probably keeping mobiles in your pockets, does it impact reproductive health and does it lead to infertility? Do you know of any studies or any ongoing studies which have shown that there is probable linkage to infertility?
There's some research evidence, which again, inconclusive, but there is evidence which says that very close proximity to reproductive organs, keeping the mobile in your phone for men, can decrease motility of the sperms, can change the morphology, as in how the shape of the sperm is. Though we know, or at least the current research says, that there is no DNA damage that can happen with mobile technology.
Yeah.
So it can't really change. But again, take that with a pinch of salt, because current evidence doesn't show it, but we don't know for sure that it does. It's also not shown, research is also not shown that it definitely doesn't cause.
This has been the same case with laptop use, with people, keeping their laptops in their
On
lap
their lap,
for a
yes.
longer time, having spermatic deficiencies or mutations.
Yeah. So again, it's all radiational energy, the Wi-Fi connected to it, the mobile data connected to it, all of it radiates energy. And also just the heat,
Yeah, right.
with especially male sexual organs, it's very important that it's in a cool place. God made scrotal sac so that it's outside the body and it has a temperature lower than the body temperature. And then we go put a hot object close to it. And many people may not realize that the heat of the phone, we get so acclimatized to the heat of the phone that we don't realize that it's actually a few degrees higher. And that much does cause enough problems to sensitive areas like the scrotal sac.
Interesting. In the present era, like for example, the children or the teenagers, like for example, when children 3 years or 4 years, when they're having food, parents tend to give mobiles, and that could be a distraction for them, probably to make the children eat food. And obviously, teenagers, there's so much of interesting aspects, and even multiple companies are trying to give out excess amount of content to attract teenagers or probably, shopping, etc., entertainment. Does this impact their cognitive abilities or probably it could impact IQ over a longer period of time in these kinds of scenarios for the upcoming generation?
So I don't know of any study specifically linking lower IQ in people who use more content, but it does decrease concentration.
Right.
It does decrease attention.
Mm.
So what's happening when I was younger, when I was a child, there was this specific bakery. And if I wanted carrot cake from that bakery, it made carrot cake on Thursday.
Right.
So if I wanted carrot cake on Friday, I had to wait a whole week to eat that carrot cake. So there's resilience, patience, all of that there. Whereas now, this content is constant. It's like every second they can move to different content. They can constantly change attention. And so they are finding hard to wait for things. They're finding hard to focus. And they're finding it hard to, to do tasks that are quite easy for us, like writing a paper, filling a boring passport form. These are all becoming extremely hard tasks because this needs time, attention, focus. So I don't necessarily know if it decreases IQ, but it definitely is decreasing attention, focus, concentration, which are all critical for
IQ.
memory and IQ.
Yeah. To even read something that is going to contribute for your IQ increase, it could affect.
Yeah, and also like you said, the content is so um, gripping for them that everything else is boring. So, like a textbook, like if you have to do medicine, all of us, the three of us here know, doesn't come easy. You read the same textbook over and over again. It's not like there's graphic information,
Yeah.
very visually. You have to, create that inside your mind. But now that the content is so
Gripping and too much.
that textbooks become boring.
Right.
Everything else becomes boring.
Because it becomes a very boring form of representation of data.
And that's why teaching methods have to change and everything has to be so gripping and so exciting that they can take that content.
With respect to this 5G technologies, we have 3G, 4G, 5G, and evoluting technologies. Is the evolution with respect to safety of radiation, or is it based on some other perspective with respect to the fastness or the bandwidth?
Yeah, from whatever I know, little bit, I'm no engineer, but I think they're only focusing on how fast can we get things done.
Right.
They're definitely not focusing on, is this safer for humans? Can we make the radiation definitely safer? Whereas right now we don't know if it's definitely safer. So, is it possible? I don't think that research is happening. At least I have not come across it. It's always about faster, better, clearer
Is
for the instrument.
Is it true that birds don't get near the area of these mobile towers because of radiation?
That's a myth I have heard too, but I don't know if there is any research evidence.
Yes.
Yeah.
One other important aspect is mobile usage has definitely increased, leaps and bounds, and some patients are right-handed, so they tend to keep the mobile on the right side of the ear. Some people are left side of probably, left side of the ear. Do you think, from a medical perspective, could it impact the hearing of a patient?
So how I see eyesight, ears, all of these questions is things that come to our mind. So if I keep my thumb in a specific position, so I'm using a muscle and I'm keeping the thumb in a very specific position, the longer I do it, the more stress on that arm, whichever muscle you take. So you use your eyes and you're constantly looking at something very close by. You're keeping the lens, the muscles attached to the eyes in a very specific position for too long. That is going to cause stress and strain. I think the same with hearing as well, right? Using the same frequency over and over again, you're not giving it changes. If you look at how our ancestors lived, so they would talk to someone, but then they would hear a bird. There are different frequencies of sounds going to them. But if you're just keeping a phone very close to your ear all the time, so anything overuse should cause damage by the nature of the repetitive use.
We do use, cyberknife treatment for acoustic schwannomas, and we are also doing research as oncologists to see if there's a specific tumor called acoustic schwannoma. And, it's a small tumor, probably in the acoustic nerve, which would impair the hearing aspect of a patient. So we are trying to see if just a simple question to the patient whether they have more, usage of mobile phone on the right side or on the left side. So it's just a questionnaire which we are trying to do in the
Yeah.
But the scientific evidence based on, just like how we have done, they've shown that there is no association. But still, in your routine practice, you do see that, that possibly could be. You're seeing a little link. Of course, this has to be done in a strict scientific setting to avoid the bias.
Yeah, that's exactly where we were when I spoke about smoking.
Right.
To establish causation takes a lot of effort from the medical community.
acoustic schwannomas were there even before mobile usage.
Correct.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So has the frequency increased? That's the question. Yeah.
So,
Studies have to be done.
so with respect to this blue light exposure and sleep disturbance, does constant mobile phone usage cause disturbance to circadian rhythm, and because of that implications?
This is a clearer question. There's definite evidence, even personal evidence of how many patients I've seen. The minute you ask people to stop mobile or screen use, any screen use, for at least 1 hour before going to sleep, their sleep improves. Right? There's very clear evidence that continuous blue screen use decreases your melatonin production. Melatonin is a common hormone that we secrete. It increases as sun sets and then gets us ready to sleep. And as sunrise happens, it decreases so we can come to wakeful state. And this is affected with that blue light. There's very clear evidence of that. So keeping either blue light controllers on your glasses that you use, or making sure the blue light is lower intensity, or keeping the phones away for the last 2-3 hours of your day is very important for sleep and circadian rhythm. If you don't sleep on time, you don't wake up on time. This is already a problem because of social media, people talking more at night, and people only having social life after 9 p.m. So it's already a problem that we're already damaging our circadian rhythm. And as doctors, we know all our hormones are related to circadian rhythm. Yeah. When does thyroid stimulating hormone go up? When does it come down? When do sexual hormones go up? When does it come down? In children, growth hormone, when does it go? So everything relates to day and night cycle. And there's a reason why we have to be awake in the morning and the reason why we should be asleep. And we're definitely disturbing that with blue light.
So do you suggest having probably supplements of melatonin or probably using melatonin sprays could help in sleep, and when a person is exposed to blue light much more and usage of mobile phone, do you think the supplements could create impact and probably cause good sleep?
So in the last year, melatonin has become over-the-counter tablet. The fact is, people are damaging their circadian rhythm all the time.
Right.
And so we'll have to do something medically. And so because it's a fairly harmless compound, it is made over the counter. Yes, it does help. But what is really important is your natural cure.
The root cause.
Yeah. You can treat it with giving a supplement of melatonin. But do you want to do that, or do you want to avoid it in the first place?
That's a very nice way of portraying the issue. Madam, when we talk of mobile addictions, today commonly we see two things. One is, of course, this reels watching continuously, and the other thing is addictions to games, video games. And I've heard that when a video game is programmed, it is programmed in a way that you may get out at a point where you want to do the game again. So they program it in a way that addiction is created. Is that true?
I think that's true. I've never worked for a gaming company, but they spend immense amount of money on research. Yeah. Even in a company like ours where we are building software for just health purposes, like my tech team knows exactly which button, if I go ask him, they will know which button I pressed for how long did I focus on one page. They have this data. And we're not even spending that much money, right? Like we're not spending in crores and crores. Whereas these gaming companies are probably spending a lot of money on these hacks, on behavioral aspects of gaming. And if you have ever played mobile games or computer games, you must have experienced this. I have, definitely. So when you're constantly losing and you're ready to give up, they'll give you some points.
Right.
They will want to keep you on.
Right.
And when you actually give up, and then go to Instagram or something, you will be invited to go back.
Mhm.
Right? Obviously. And it's just business, isn't it? They're just doing what they're good at.
Good.
Yeah. So we have to take care of whether do we really want to do that. So the basic fundamental principle is they have to trigger your reward pathway. They make sure that the reward pathway is triggered. Are you attracted to me as a game? And am I triggering enough dopamine release inside your brain?
Right.
Right? And as your dopamine drops, what can I do to shoot it up again?
Right. Right.
Right? And they've become masters at this. So yes, definitely all of that you asked.
With mobile usage, there is sedentary lifestyle which has come into the fore, and obviously, obesity is one of the biggest concerns as a society because we know obesity is linked to multiple health issues like cardiovascular. Okay, with respect to cancer, we know there are many studies which have proven that obesity is one of the major factors for cancer causation. I think indirectly mobile phone usage itself is leading to obesity and sedentary lifestyle.
Yeah, completely agree with that statement. So initially we came from being hunters, gatherers, we were active all the time to doing a little more sitting jobs, right? As doctors, we're constantly sitting in outpatients, at least as surgeons, you probably stand a little bit, right? As a psychiatrist, I sit the whole day. So our life is anyway sedentary, work-wise. And now we added our leisure is also sedentary. We're not going out to play. We're not going out to like a park. We're not going out to meet people. We're calling them on a phone. We're chatting them on the phone. We're doing video chats. Everything is becoming completely sedentary. So we'll need less and less amount of food, right, to
Probably
maintain.
2 decades ago, when we were kids, life was much, you know, proactive in the sense with respect to exercise. Probably there was only a landline which we used to use. There's no mobile unit, so at least we could go out, we could explore, we could play in the street, and there could be some kind of an exercise.
Yeah.
In the present era, I think the kids and the teens are experiencing this mobile usage fad, which has created a probably going to create a great amount of health anxiety in our population as well.
Yeah. So mine is 4 decades ago.
Okay.
So there, we didn't have a telephone at all. It only came when I was like 14, 15. Even the turning kind of telephone. We didn't have a television. We definitely didn't have mobile phones till I went into post medical college. So yeah, all our evenings were spent on the road
Right.
playing things. So all leisure activities was on the road. Even things like vehicles were not there. We would walk to places. We would not necessarily be escorted everywhere.
Correct.
So yeah, so mobile phones have become a problem
Right.
because you were talking about food and children where moms are showing them things on the mobile to make them feed. I remember my mom taking me out on the terrace, showing me some star or so we are still, like active. We are not sitting, seeing something at 1 feet distance.
Completely focused, completely obsessed with
Yeah.
a certain kind of cartoon or a certain kind of a game which is going
Yeah.
on just to make the kid eat.
And some of the times I explain this to my clients. I also say you're linking two activities. So something that is very high dopamine
Right.
producing, which is the content that you're watching, you're linking that to eating food.
Correct.
So what happens is because dopamine is released with this activity, you end up eating every time you're watching.
Ah,
So the link between if I go to a movie, I have to have popcorn.
right.
How did that link develop?
Mm.
It's because high dopamine attached. So you're attaching 2 or 3 more bad habits. You're not just sitting and watching a movie. You're not just sitting and watching content. You're also attaching other unhealthy habits to it. Not eating fruit, but eating another high dopamine producing, salty, sugary food.
So I have a question, Mark. So we know that children usually mimic whatever they see, whether it's adults or whether it's their fellow children that they play with. We often see that when they see a cartoon A, which is very mild, let's say it's very gentle, and they replicate the same habit in them. And when they see a cartoon B, where more aggression is involved, fight is involved, they try to do the same thing. With that being so, with today's era of mobile addiction, even in children, what kind of behavioral issues do you see in them as a psychiatrist?
So we see a number of behavioral issues, especially with parents becoming more and more busier, less like involvement with children. Or I would, it's not. I'm not putting it as a complaint against parents, but we just have lesser time to supervise. And we are nuclear families. There are not grandparents to look at, and even if they're grandparents, they do not understand technology, so they can't really observe what the child is watching. And unfortunately, the content is just widely and freely available. So not just violent stuff. So I had a young child who had come, who had unfortunately seen, the Bhopal tragedy Netflix series that came. So the dad was watching it, and the child happened to watch a little bit of it. And the dad did not notice the child watching it. He was completely traumatized because it was very graphic,
Right, right.
death scenes and things like that. And so we had to actually do trauma work with that child. And it was too graphic for a child, right? So it's not just violence, but also sexual content.
Right.
So children are getting exposed to sexual content a lot earlier because of social media and all the channels that are there, which means that their sexual growth is earlier. That means they produce sexual hormones earlier, which basically means that everything's going, a little earlier, faster. But their brain is not yet ready.
Ready
Their
for
body is ready, brain's not yet ready. So they get into riskier habits. They get, earlier pregnancies, STDs, and all of these problems. So, yeah, content is a huge problem. How do we protect our children from content that is bad? Yeah, because there's no way. How many firewalls are you going to put?
Right,
Right, and how many parents know how to use these firewalls?
right.
Right, so it
They
is a
really
huge
have the
problem.
time to monitor.
Exactly. It's such a wide field that even educated people like us, like as doctors, how much technology do we know? My son probably knows how to navigate around whatever firewall I've put.
Right.
Then I know how to do it. So because they're born with it, like you said, it's become an extension of their body.
Right.
They're very clued into these things, whereas it's a effort to learn for us.
Coming to the adults, ma'am, mobile usage, does it cause more stress, anxiety, and depression? What do you feel from a psychiatrist perspective?
It does cause a lot of stress and anxiety and depression. One part of it is the constant need to know everything, right? And to have the need to know everything that's happening in the world. There's too much information overload. Yeah. So how much information can I actually take in? And do I really need so much information? And how is this actually improving? And when you have that much information, you also get that much stressed. So even this podcast, I'm going to say something negative about your podcast. We know all of this information we are giving these people. And then if they're already stressed and then they have to use their phone for their work, are we causing more stress in them by saying don't use your phone? But whereas they can't not use their phone, right? So all the information we are getting, good, bad, is causing us distress. And also mobile phone use for social media, for example. Instagram, especially the younger adults, you see that there's such a need for everything to be perfect, right? Like we were talking about our childhood. I was quite happy in like a slip on the road. And, it's very simple slip, no shoes, dirty, in the gutter. I was very happy playing like that, right? No one was taking pictures of us. No one was, posting it on social media.
Right.
No one was, scrutinizing us for not looking good or for hair being messy. Whereas we're sitting here in this podcast room today, I have to look perfect. My smile has to be perfect. And then everyone else who sees me thinks I'm this perfect all the time.
Right.
And so then they are stressed that they are not this perfect all the time. What they don't see is behind this, there's a lot of imperfection, right? And young adults do not realize this. It's worse for them. So, like a marriage, my marriage was better than yours, your color was better than mine, my setting was better than my birthday.
Travel takes much better and travels a lot.
Yeah. 18th year birthday was mine was better, yours was better. So there's a lot of comparison. We did not need to do this comparison. And how do we then get children not to compare when they have so much?
Yeah, and today the first thing that we do is whenever you do something.
You always wanted to take a picture.
It's on the net, it's on the Instagram post, it's on the Facebook. You want to constantly keep updating what's happening in your life. It's become a routine. But madam, I have a question. See, when I was in MBBS, I didn't have much access to use Google or any other information productive networking, I would say. So the only source was I would go to the library, check for books, and then try to understand little better. But whereas today, you can't really discount the fact that media has helped us understand a lot of things better. So today, if something is happening in the UK or US, you get to know it. So you are in a better form to update yourself for betterment as well. We can't discount the positive aspects of using mobile, while certainly there is a lot of addiction and negative aspects. What solution would you give for this?
So I'm glad you brought this up because as adults living in this generation or even youngsters living, so a lot of parents will probably see this podcast and say, look, 3 doctors have now told you have to stop, you can't use. But then what will they do? They'll be even more left out, they'll be socially ostracized, right? They will not have the knowledge that the other kids have. Is that what we want for our children? They'll be constantly unhappy that they're not given the same privileges as others. So is there good in technology? And of course there's a lot of good, right? Recently a family member was undergoing a surgery and I went to this surgeon and he had this 3D image. He explained exactly how the knee looks and how the ligament is and how he's going to repair it in 3D image for my family member and me. And I realized that for the first time, I understood the structure of knee so well. 25 years after finishing medicine, right? Because we studied it in 2D. And no matter how much dissection we did, it was not very clear. It's not
Grey's
real.
Anatomy, Atlases, that's all that we had.
Yeah. So yes, technology is very good and we should use it and we should let our kids also enjoy the privilege that technology gives and phones give or laptops give. But it's always a tightrope walk, right? Anything, Madhyama concept. Anything you do too much is bad. You should know where to stop. And for younger adults, for children, they do not have that stop button in their brain developed yet. So as adults, we should create that structure so that we create that stop button and that they rely on us to, to manage their use of gadgets.
One other question is, how does mobile affect social relationships? Okay, and it could be interpersonal relationships or even relationships with respect to your partner as well. And does it also impact the sexual health as well?
So, mobile use is an addiction sometimes, right? So, what is
When
an
do you call this as an addiction? Is there a kind of timeline, or when do you classify it as an addiction from a medical mental health expert?
so any behavioral addiction? So we say so there are substance use, which is like cocaine, amphetamine. These are substance use addictions. But now a large part of behavioral addictions are coming up, right? When call a behavioral thing we're doing is an addiction, is when you're increasing your consumption of that behavior constantly. So every day you do a little bit more. So when you first started it, you were playing this game for 10 minutes, and now you have to play for an hour to get the same satisfaction, right? Or when you don't get it, like you said, you left your phone at home, there's withdrawal symptoms, there's stress, there's anxiety. So you can't live without it. If you try to live without it, there's some distress in you, or that you're doing it despite some physical health problem.
Okay.
right? Your neck is hurting, your back is hurting, your hands are hurting because you're constantly using your thumbs, repetitive injuries because of same muscle use, or your social relationship issues have started. As in, you're giving so much focus to that everything else in life has become secondary. You don't need your friends, you don't need your partner. You're not giving as much attention to what you cook or what, because it's important to cook quickly, eat quickly, and then go to your, yeah. So any illness reaches illness threshold when it's causing problems to us. Problems either physically or mentally, distress, or socially. As in, others say, come on, this is not okay. You need to look at me when you talk. You can't be looking at your phone.
Correct.
Then it's an addiction.
Correct. One leading question to this aspect is the treatment for mobile addiction. Is it just behavioral therapy, or is there a drug therapy which is going to be also used in the de-addiction protocols from a mental health expert?
So largely behavioral therapy, largely motivational enhancement therapy to try and help them to create the motivation for them to have insight into how much problem it's causing, and to kind of tilt the balance of how much pleasure it's giving to how much problem it's causing. So we try to tilt the balance to show them that the problems are not worth it. Like, the dopamine release is only like temporary. You need to give this up to have the rest of life intact. So largely therapy based. But there are some evidences, like naltrexone, for example, is a tablet. We use it in opioid addiction. It's an opioid blocker.
Okay.
So that's why we use it. But it also reduces the dopamine surge in any reward system for any. So it decreases dopamine in the reward system in the brain. So will that help?
Right.
So we are experimenting with it. Obviously, there's no clear evidence that it does help, but we are trying a few drugs.
Really exciting.
So, is there any difference between introverts and extroverts, addiction pattern to mobile? Because extroverts are very easy in talking to people or having a social circle or other forms of happiness, whereas introverts are more towards themselves. Does this mobile phone addiction kind of create an artificial social circle for them?
It does, especially people who are generally anxious personality. Introverts, I mean, I define introverts as someone who's happy being with themselves.
Right.
So there's no problem with them. Like, they're happy reading a book or whatever. They're not keen to go meet someone, or they're very happy. So, but if you have social anxiety and you're just internalized everything, you're not introvert, but you're introvert because I can't go meet, I'm anxious, then it becomes a false world. You create a false world within the web system, the World Wide Web, where you can create whatever profile you want, and then you can be whoever you want, and you don't have to show your face. And then, yes, it becomes like a safety net where they can have. Is that good or bad? Again, we can discuss, because if it was not there, what would they do?
Right.
Correct.
Right? So, a little bit of it is probably good, because people can then start finding friends in a more safer environment for themselves.
Right.
Right? So, in a way, it's good, in a way, it's bad.
Is digital detox, is that movement a real fact right now, or is it like just to sell more amount of wellness apps, or probably kind of more usage of marketing gimmick?
Another marketing.
That's marketing gimmicks.
Yeah, for every plus, there's a minus. For everything positive, there's
But do
one.
you see that in your practice, like digital detox? Do you talk to people, and does it really happen in the real world?
Yes, I do talk about it to people, especially if you're actually addicted as an illness to an app or a specific game. So mobile addiction can be various things, like you can be watching sexual contact porn on the media. That could be, addiction to sexual content. It could be gambling online. It could be different forms of mobile addiction, or it could be just plain social media addiction, right? So I do suggest, so switching off the whole phone is quite dramatic, right? And not using it. We do use it, especially in gambling, for people who are using largely online online resources for gambling, we do say stay off, right? That is the detox. But for smaller addictions, like if someone is addicted to a game, I do suggest delete the game for a few weeks. Or they're addicted to Instagram. My first suggestion is delete Instagram. I'm not suggesting that you can never go back. So if you look at the biology behind addiction, if I use something all the time and that's giving me a high, there's like a neuronal channel formed, right? That is so strong. And this is how I explain that if I start driving a car, initially I have to think of what is the clutch, where do I put my leg, how do I put the gear, and how do I put my accelerator. But after 10 years, I'm not thinking. How does that happen?
Right.
It's because our neurons connect so well that the neuronal body itself doesn't have to do anything, doesn't have to actually think. The connections are well formed, the white matter is well formed, that it takes on, which in common terms we call it as muscle memory, right? So in addiction, what happens? You've used something so often that the minute you touch it, there's a reward system activating. The minute you don't touch it, it's craving, right? How are you going to delete the system? It's only by non-use.
And is there a timeline for not using it for the connections to go up?
The longer you have, so for things like cannabis addiction, I say if you've used it for a year, you need at least 1 month to just get to back to normal. Not for the connection to delete, just to feel like lesser craving or, for it to be tolerable. So in that 1 month, you're going to feel terrible and you're going to miss it a lot and all of that. As a general,
Longer for smoking?
if you completely quit, no. I mean, craving, psychological craving can be there. The physical craving should go off pretty soon. But so it's like anything you've tried, so if you think about your happiest memory, in which released the most dopamine in your life, you do anything to get that back, right?
Exactly.
So the memory is not rubbed off. So smoking, the first time you smoke, the dopamine hit you had, that memory is never going to be rubbed off. So at any time you're a little weak, you're going to get that memory and you'll be like, oh, I want that, right? So the craving never goes away, I think, or the desire never goes away, but you get stronger against the craving.
Madam, with respect to this radiation exposure, even when we don't use the mobile, it's there with us constantly.
Yes.
So, what solution would you give to restrict the exposure to this radiation, whether it's harmful or not harmful?
So for gadgets itself, I'd definitely say, especially with sleep connection being very clear, I'd definitely say stop using gadgets at least 1 or 2 hours before sleep time. For all people, especially kids, all gadgets should be outside the room.
Okay.
And I recommend when children are addicted to phones, I recommend adults follow it as well. You talked about children following what we do and not doing what we say. So the whole family takes all the gadgets and puts it on the dining table in the living room and then goes to bed, like at their sleep time. That is definitely one thing that can be very easily done. And not carrying it very close to your body. As women, I think we're slightly luckier. We always put our phone in a bag,
Yeah.
whereas men have pockets, which is a huge disadvantage, right? So I say don't carry it on your body. And they say if you do have to carry it with the screen facing you, not the battery facing you.
It shouldn't be facing the body.
Because it gets heated and yeah. So and then there are some cases you can buy which claim to decrease the radiation coming out of it. Try and buy those. Try and use these wired headphones rather than wireless, because we again don't, those will produce radiation as well. And if you're making a call, if you can put it on a speaker, put it on your car sound system rather than taking it in your ear, right? And or if you're at home, try and keep the device as away as possible, 1 foot, 2 feet. Especially laptops, don't keep it on your lap. Make sure there's distance between your body and the gadgets. So as much as possible away from it, though you can't cut it off.
So I think we've got 10 takeaways from, on the podcast about mobile usage and its impact on our overall well-being. And it's been a totally exciting discussion. And thanks for your great inputs. It was pleasure, getting to know from a doctor's perspective. I didn't get to know so much about, the research happening and the exciting aspects of mobile and its addiction and its impact on the overall health of person.
And very beautifully highlighted this concept of madhyama,
Madhyama.
optimal usage.
Yeah.
So nothing is totally wrong or nothing is totally right. When you use it rightly, everything is going to be beneficial.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for coming over and joining us in this podcast, madam.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine.